housekeeping rules. Today's session is for 1 hour, including question and answers, and we request all of you to please stay muted for the session, and please put your questions in the chat box. We will share the recording of the session with you, and we'll post it on our website and social media. And at the end of the session, we will be sharing a feedback form, and we hope that you'll be able to fill that. Thank you so much, and over to you, Sajjad Saab.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of CFA Society Pakistan, a very warm welcome to all the participants who are joining us from different locations. Thank you so much for taking the time to attend this event. We are honored to have with us a highly distinguished speaker, Mr. Kashif Mateen Ansari, an accomplished professional and who has a very successful track record as an entrepreneur as well. Mr. Kashif Mateen Ansari is a Harvard alumni who brings 20 years of professional experience and diversified experience of leadership and management. His areas of expertise include strategy formulation, business turnaround, corporate governance, team building, and leadership. He is currently the founding chief executive officer of the Sachal Energy, a 50 megawatt wind farm. And is also a managing partner at Avant-Garde Consulting with a focus on developing projects in the areas of alternative energy. He has been chief operating officer at Army Welfare Trust, is a conglomerate with around 20 business units with 13,000 employees, including banking sector, insurance, pharmaceutical, oil and gas, IT, and agriculture sector. Today's topic for the discussion, renewable energy trends analysis in the way forward, is very relevant in today's time. With the declining domestic oil and gas production and increasing reliance on imported energy, currently the imported energy and our the primary supplies is more than 50%, and we see that the import bill for FY22 was 26 billion US dollar. So our reliance on imported energy is very large. The today's topic is very relevant in this context. So in today's topic, Mr. Kashif Ansari will cover what are the current trends in the renewable energy, and then what are the indigenous energy resources in comparison with the global market, and how renewable energy resources can be utilized to safeguard Pakistan economy, and do we have the right policy framework to facilitate and expand the renewable energy market in the country. I'm sure that this will be a very insightful and very informative section over the next 1 hour. And without taking any further time, I will hand over the floor to Mr. Asif Ali Qureshi, who will moderate this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sajjad Saab. I think we have a fairly significant audience available right now, and we're very eagerly looking forward to hear from Kashif Saab. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Kashif Saab to please proceed with his presentation. And we'll have a Q&A session at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bahut shukriya, Sajjad, for your extremely kind words. And thank you, Hassan Saab. Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala nabiyyil kareem. So I'll just start with my presentation. So let me share it, and just I hope my presentation is available on the screens. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So today this topic, renewable energy trends analysis and the way forward, it's a very relevant topic in today's world, and I'll try to do some justice with this topic. First of all, let me give you an overview of sorry, there is some. Okay, so this is the way I'm going to tackle this topic. Just these would be the trends, the analysis of the existing energy resources, then the renewable energy in Pakistan, some challenges, and the way forward. Now, before we start, the detail, let me give you what you say, a background. At the moment, Pakistan is plagued with problems with relate to energy security, affordability, and reliability. You can see on the slides, Pakistan is ranking 83rd on the energy security, 90th in the energy equity, and 85th for the sustainability. So more than 24% of our supply is imported. Transportation and power generation is heavily reliant on foreign oil. And unfortunately, as our population is rising, it's only almost 75% of the population which has access to power. And you'll see how we rank with respect to per capita power utilization, which is an indication of what you say, the standard of living or development of a country, how we lag behind the rest of the world, that I'll show later on. And unfortunately, with this background where we are facing problems with affordability, reliability, sustainability, and security, we are not doing much towards the indigenization of the energy sector. If you could see, coal at the moment is generating almost 19% of our electricity. And we have a relatively abundant resource of coal in the form of third coal. But yes, the problem with that is that one, it is difficult to make use of, but now we are doing it. But second, it is devastating for the environment. So in the long run, using coal as one of the major indigenous resources would have its own problems, not for us, but also for the world. Then wind and sun, they are available in abundance in Pakistan, but at the moment their share is less than 5% in our total energy mix. So that is like the background information which I wanted to give. And also one more thing before I move further, that what are the global shifts which are happening in the energy system, energy environment. There are certain shifts which are happening in the paradigm. One is that the clean energy or the renewable energy, its costs are falling rapidly, and there is a rapid deployment of these kind of energy generation technologies in the world, and growing electrification of energy. You know, the way we use energy, like previously, it was diesel cars or petrol cars, now they are electric cars. Likewise, heatings was primarily through burning fuel, now it is electrified. So there is electrification of the end usage of energy happening in the world. Then China, which is one of the major drivers in the global economy, it is moving towards, it's shifting towards service-oriented economy and a cleaner energy mix. So that is also driving the whole energy paradigm, shift the whole energy paradigm in the world. And the fourth is that the shale gas and the tight oil in the US, its resilience, because once this thing started, like almost more than a decade ago, there were like thoughts that it might not be able to sustain the energy utilization of the US, but this has become a major player. So these four things, they are actually shifting the energy paradigm in the world. So this is like just for the background, because you'll see how these things connect once we move forward in our presentation. So first of all, I'll give you what are the modern trends in the renewable energy. So we all know, I think, that the future is very bright for the renewables. By 2040, renewables will be the lowest cost source of new generation of power. Then if you could see that 2/3 of the global power plant investment will be coming in the renewable energy sector. In 2021, the global investment in the renewable energy capacity, which means new capacity, was $530 billion in 1 year. And this is the 7th year in a row where this global investment in this sector has exceeded $250 billion per annum. And then China is rapidly deploying solar PV, which is the solar energy. And India is also, following suit and becoming, both these countries, they are increasingly utilizing solar energy for their energy use. And it would be by 2040 that this would be one of the major source of power in the renewables. And the renewables themselves will account for 40% of total power generation in the world by 2040, almost half. And in the EU, approximately renewables all the new capacity which is coming up in the EU in the power generation, 80% of that is in the renewable sector. And in the EU, because of the in the North Sea and because of the offshore wind power has become and it will be the primary source of electricity after 2030. So if you see that 2030 is not very distant future and 2040 is also not very far away, but if you see there is a shift where the energy generation is moving away from the traditional fossil fuels towards the renewable, and solar and wind, they are playing and they will be playing a very important role in that. So I talked about the electrification of the energy use. So electricity is the fastest growing global energy end use. Like I talked about cars. So the cars run by petrol and diesel, now they are being replaced by the electric cars. So fuel consumption by 2040, 40% of that fuel consumption will move towards end use would be through the electricity. And actually, if you look back 25 years, the same percentage held true for oil. So if you see for the end use of energy, electricity would be the new oil. By 2040, the current 10 million electric vehicles would have grown to 280 million electric vehicles. It's like how many times this is the jump you can see. So, and along with that, digital technologies, they are improving the power system efficiency and flexibility. And obviously, they will be introducing new vulnerabilities, which obviously relate to energy security. And I won't be dealing with that today. But that is like another important point. Once we look at renewables and electrification of energy, then we have to also look at that how digitization, the new technologies, they are improving the efficiency and the flexibility in the power generation, transmission, and usage, all that. So as I said, China is the main driver. So Chinese, choices, their decisions, they are shaping the global trends. China is moving towards clean energy. China spent $380 billion on renewables in 2021. And the year previous to that, in 2020, it was $95 billion. So they are investing quite a lot in the renewables. So their investment in the renewable sector, they are actually what you say, pumping the boom of the renewable technologies in the world. They are one of the major producers of the wind turbines and the solar PV panels both. So if you look at the graph, so China is the major, the cumulative capacity in the renewables. China holds the highest share in the world, more than 1,000 gigawatt. And then you have followed by USA, Brazil, India. So if you see, India is at the fourth number, which is, again, I would say quite impressive. So this graph tells you that China is by far leading the race or leading the trends in the renewable energy. So giving you this background in the renewable energy, now I'm going to just show you what is happening at the market level in the renewables in the global investment climate. So if you see in 2021, the new power capacity which was invested in, almost 70% globally went to renewable energy. You can see the exact numbers, 27% to solar, 24% to wind, and the rest to other hydro and other renewables. So almost 70% went to, in the new capacity investments, it went to renewables. This graph shows the same trend where you can see the green, which is the renewable power. So it is increasing, and obviously fossil fuel and others, they are decreasing. The same you can see here, it is the futuristic graph from 2000 to 2050. So if you see this gray is the renewable energy. So if you see in 2010 or 2005, where renewable energy had a minuscule share in the total energy mix globally, going forward towards 2050, it will be a major share. And obviously, oil might be able to keep its absolute share, but its relative share will decrease, and other fossil fuel will give way to renewable energy. Now, once we talk about renewable energy and its proliferation, there is one important thing is that renewable energy is intermittent in nature. Let me talk about wind. So there is the wind speed changes all the times. Actually, every minute the wind speed changes, which means the electric generation through wind turbines will be intermittent. It won't be a sustained similar level of energy produced 24 in the 24 hours time. Same is the case with solar. We all know in the night, obviously there is no sun, so there can't be any solar power. And even during the day, if there is a intermittent cloud cover, so that will change the energy production. So the intermittent nature of renewables had been a problem in their adoption previously, and this is covered by the storage of energy. That if you can produce energy anytime and store it and would be able to use it later, that is the game changer. Now that's why I am going to discuss storage of energy briefly here. That storage of energy, the global market is $210 billion by 2021 figures, and it is going to reach more than $435 billion by 2030, growing at an annual 8.5% rate, annual rate of growth, in the future. In 2021, the cumulative installed capacity for global electrochemical energy storage, the energy storage projects, just leave electrochemical anything, the energy storage projects, it was exceeded 21 gigawatt, and in that year, more than 7,500 megawatt of global energy storage projects, they were invested or they came online. And China intends to produce 120 gigatons of battery cells per year. Sweden, Hungary, Poland, and Germany, they're also planning the same. They are coming up with large-scale battery plants, UK also. So the storage of energy is another, what you say, tertiary or the vertical linked industry with the renewables that is going to boom in the future. And it is going to reshape or shape the way we utilize renewables in the market. Now, this graph, without going into details of this graph, if you just look at it, it starts from 2012 and goes towards 2040. If you see, it is exponentially growing, and this is the way the energy storage capacity in the world will be growing. I think the graph is self-evident that you can see it will be an exponential growth in the energy storage capacity in the world. Now, with the increase or the availability or commercial viability of energy storage, renewables will become even more utilizable. You can generate power at the time once wind is high or when the sun is there, and you can use it later. So if this storage is commercially viable, which it is now, and it will become even more, it will become cheaper. So this becomes even more important for the proliferation of the renewable energy. Now, with this thing, with the renewables, growing in size, the technology advancing, and their cost reducing because of the action of China and other countries, and the storage capacity is coming up with their commercial costs also decreasing. So we come to this distributed energy, which has a big ramification for countries like Pakistan. Now, distributed energy resources and on demand, the advancement of demand side response, DSR technologies, that is now continuing, and it will improve. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the technicalities of this thing, but it is just simple that normally we are accustomed to a central grid, like we see the WABDA, transmission lines running all across the country, and obviously large power plants situated at certain places. Previously, they used to be closer to the coal sources or closer to the ports from where you can bring in the imported fuel and burn it and produce electricity and then move it through that grid to all parts of the country. Now, that grid is a very expensive affair. Grid is a very difficult affair. It loses energy. Then, unless you bring that grid to all the parts of the country, you can't electrify. But now the technology is moving towards distributed energy resources, because if you see, wind is available at many places, solar is abundantly available at almost all the places in Pakistan. Now, this new development where distributed energy resources, how they can be pulled together, even virtual electrical plants now, power plants could be made in which small, like individual resident households, they are generating small electricity, each of them, but they are connected as a virtual power plant through technology, and they are able to provide electricity to that small grid in that area, which might be a far-flung area. That is the new technology which is coming up, which is giving rise to what you say distributed grids. Yeah, distributed energy. We are already seeing now in Pakistan rooftop solar, which is connected to the grid by virtue of reverse metering, which is also distributed generation, but it is still connected to the main grid. But this can now move forward where, let's say, look at Balochistan. They're far-flung areas, very difficult to reach, very costly to reach by the grid itself. So instead of taking the grid there can be a small distributed grid, small grid created at that place, and energy generation could be done through solar, maybe combined with wind. It could be done at the rooftops, combined with some as a farm nearby, and all pulled together as a virtual power plant with the help of new technologies which are there. Now that can be a game changer for Pakistan, because as you will see later, I'm going to show you that in Pakistan, the energy utilization per capita is very low. We don't have energy. We don't have energy availability. Now I'm just going to show you how this decentralization is happening and where it is going. Just to give you an idea, if you look at this graph, so it goes into the future to 2040, and just simply you can see that by 2040, Australia would have moved to almost 45% of its energy utilization and production done through decentralized grid. So the world is moving away from the centralized grid to decentralized grids, decentralized production. And you can see this graph is evident. Germany is there almost above, close to 35%. Brazil would be above 30%. Same is the case with Japan. So all these countries are moving towards distributed generation and distributed grids. So that's like an idea which we have to take in mind, how in Pakistan this could be done. Now, renewable energy in Pakistan. So if you look at Pakistan, so unfortunately, this has become almost a cliche that we say that Pakistan has abundance of resources, but actually Pakistan has. Unfortunately, we are unable to tap them properly. Now, if you look at these figures, some of them might look almost what you say. At least once I saw them first time, quite some times ago, it appears almost that this is not right. So Pakistan has more than 2 million megawatt of electricity it can produce through solar, more than 63,000 megawatt through wind. And actually here I've reported the source as NEPRA, but actually these figures can be confirmed through international energy surveys, through the international laboratories in the US and Denmark. They all say that Pakistan's potential is even more than this. Then this is like two big, because we have been talking about solar and wind. So obviously the first two are solar and wind. We have so much potential there, but we have other potential also in the form of biomass. Now the cane, sugar cane is a big crop in Pakistan. So the cane trash can produce almost 9.5 gigawatt hour. Sorry to say here, but 1 gigawatt is 1000 megawatt. So it's a lot of energy. You don't have to go into the numbers. The point is I want to show is that it is a lot of energy we can produce through cane trash. Then the cotton sticks. We can still produce a very large amount of energy through cotton sticks, which generally we are just burning and creating the problem of smog and pollution. Then the solid waste, which we generate in our urban centers and which is actually a menace. You look at solid waste in Karachi, you look at that in Lahore, in Islamabad, Rawalpindi, everywhere. We have a problem that we are not really dealing with our municipal solid waste. But that is in itself, these are the figures which we had gathered through some survey. So more than 7 million tons per annum we produce in the form of solid waste, and we can generate quite a lot of energy, more than 13 gigawatt hour per annum utilizing this solid waste. So these are all, the various potential renewable sources which we have in Pakistan. Now we come to the point about the energy consumption per capita. Have a look at this graph, please. And if you see Pakistan, third from the right, 471 kilowatt hour per capita. So 1 kilowatt hour is 1 unit. Generally, जो हम बिजली का बिल अदा करते हैं जी कितने यूनिट्स का बिल है तो 1 kilowatt is 1 unit there. So 471 units per capita is our average. Now compare it with India, it is 805 per capita, almost double, almost. And now you compare it with Denmark, almost 6,000 units. Japan, almost 8,000 units. Australia, 10,000 units. So we can see where we are. Even so, we are like one of those countries where energy consumption per capita is very, very low. And this actually has to be combined and seen in the light where more than 25% of our population actually has no access to electricity. So this is like where we are, and this is like what is we are planning or what is our promise. So under the renewable energy policy in 2019, we said that renewable energy would account for 20% of Pakistan's energy mix by 2025 and 30% by 2030. So Pakistan's total energy generation now stands a bit more than 40,000 megawatt, and we can see how much. Just to give you these were the promises, I would say. This is where the world is in, if you see globally. So globally, wind power is now producing 6% almost, solar is almost 2%. Very important to see what is happening next door. India, in their total energy mix, solar is 12.4%, wind is 10%. So between wind and solar, almost 22, almost 25% in their total energy mix. If you include hydro, then obviously they go to almost 38% renewable in their energy mix. But without hydro, solar and wind, still they are almost now 1/4 of their mix is coming from solar and wind. Now, look at Pakistan. Why I have come through all this, that now we are producing how much from renewables? All renewables put together, solar, wind, and the gas and all that, except hydro, it is barely 6%. 6%. So India, almost 25% renewable in their energy mix. Pakistan, 6%. So if we have these trends in our mind, if we have our problems in our mind, and if we know our potential, so what should be the output of the energy policy? I think what should be the output is quite easy to understand, that the strategic thrust should be that there is a supply-demand gap. There's a lot of load shedding going on. So we have to have reliable generation capacity for long term. Then we have to create affordable electricity. We have expensive electricity, which is most of our fuel-fired plants, especially those which are run by the government, especially, they are producing electricity at exorbitant prices. We do look at articles and news and everything talking about the IPPs producing very costly energy. But if you really look closer, the government-owned power plants are, I would say, they are way ahead in that game. Then, yes, we have very expensive electricity production through fossil fuel. So we have to move towards relatively inexpensive or cheaper electricity generation. Then we have to have better efficiency and governance. The problem here is that we might not be able to reduce the cost of electricity generation, even in renewables, beyond a certain level. But what is in our control is to improve the efficiency and governance. Our transmission losses are like totally way out of the mark, not comparable to any benchmark or any standards in the world. Then Our maintenance is in bad shape. Our transmission and distribution system is in bad shape. So we have to move towards low transmission losses, better maintenance, then sustainability, which links to energy security. We rely on imports, obviously, and we have to move towards the indigenous resources. Second, we discourage investment, and I really say that we discourage investment at the right places. Now, this is a policy question. We have to create an environment of openness and transparency if you really want the private sector to come in and play the right role. And here, I don't mean that private sector should be allowed to just run amok and make all the money they can and just don't consider about the interests of the consumers. No, but that all could be addressed and should be addressed through the energy policy. So in Pakistan, obviously, in the fossil fuels, we are running out of time. We don't have our own oil reserves as per OGDC. We will be running out our gas reserves and our oil reserves in a year's time, in 2 years' time, or maybe 6 years' time. Our transmission losses are 22%. I don't know where we can compare or we can find any comparable figure in any country for our size. Then circular debt, obviously, is like you have been listening to it. It has crossed 4 trillion now. So what are the challenges in formulation and implementation of the national energy policy? Now, I've given you all the background, all the developments in the renewable sector, and I can say with a lot of confidence that Pakistan has the potential, and the renewable energy technology has come at that stage where it could be utilized properly, to alleviate Pakistan's problems. So now, what are our challenges? So our challenges are, first, we have focused on power generation. So that's why we are now more than 40,000 megawatt of power generation available. But we have not really looked at it in a holistic manner. So there is congestion, there is inefficiency, there is lack of infrastructure in transmission and distribution. Then, unfortunately, many of our decisions are politically motivated. Third, we lack enough data, and even if data is available, we lack proper analysis. There is no analysis of the available data to feed into the policy framework. Then bureaucratic delays and lack of progress. I can tell you that there have been renewable power projects, including mine, who have waited for even more than a year, sometimes, just to sign off on a regulatory document, and that had withheld their progress or start of construction. So a year lost just to sign a project, bureaucratic delays. So then, unfortunately, we are always quick in criticizing any previous policy, but we just don't really analyze it properly, that proper understanding of the benefits and consequences of the past and current power policies. Not all the policies, not everything was wrong, not everything was right. But have we really done a proper analysis to remove what has not served us and create or improve upon what could and what have served us in the past? So then we find at the policy level a great challenge that we always are unable to balance the divergent interests of the various stakeholders. So what are the way forward? There can be a lot of discussion on these every point, but because of the time limitation, I will be just skimming through those. But the way forward is that we should prioritize renewable energy in Pakistan, as we have seen that Pakistan has immense potential for that. And the cost of renewables is declining globally. It is just like the way the computers, the chip making, with every technology, this is what happens, and this is happening in the renewables also. 10 years ago, the cost of 1 megawatt of a turbine in the wind, today, the cost is less than 50% of that. So the cost is declining. That grid decentralization, this is a very important thing, that we have to decentralize our grid. Low electrical demand and substantial distribution losses in rural areas. Because of that, it is not really economically sustainable and practical to just serve everything through your single centralized grid. We have to move towards decentralization, distributed grids, smaller grids. Now, about the renewable energy, wind power is like our major performer in the renewable energy sector in Pakistan. And all of that is concentrated in Jampir and Gharo corridor. Again, there, the problem is the potential is of the Jampir corridors, the potential is almost 40,000 megawatt. And the problem with that is that we need grid planning and infrastructure upgrades there. Otherwise, you can't have new wind projects come up there. You can't evacuate the power which is generated there. So then the Pakistan's transmission, as I talked about, the transmission is very poor. Our distribution and transmission both are very poor. So we have to have a new investment in that, and that investment can come through the private sector. The government has only has to come up with the right policy framework. Then, as I talked about the distributed grids or the mini grids, now there are several applications now which are which have been developed across the globe now. So we can make use of those in Pakistan to come up with microgrids for this distributed energy generation and utilization. That will reduce the requirement of taking the grid, making those heavy investments. As you see now in Pakistan, for the main energy grid, just under the CPEC, we have come up with our first DC line. Normally, the major grid transmission lines in Pakistan, they are not DC lines. The first DC line is being built, I think Matiari, it starts from Matiari, Sindh, and goes towards central Punjab. And it is a very costly affair. I think more than $3 billion, almost $4 billion. So one DC line. And that one DC line can take how much electricity? I think 4,000 megawatts. What's your gap? Your energy consumption per capita is even almost half than India, which means we want to go to the energy consumption per capita equal to India. So you have to go from 40,000 megawatt to 80,000 megawatt. Now increasing another 40,000 megawatt, how are you going to move it from the energy production plants to the consumer or to the load centers, as we say in our jargon? That has to go through the grid. Okay, but the grid is a very costly affair. So the microgrids is one way of looking at our problems. Then dispersed generation, that will also help in climate change issues. Like I've given an example in the New York University now, 90% they are through the distributed generation. So we can reduce the line losses, because if it is a distributed grid, so the energy production and consumption is being done in a very small area. So the line losses and all those kind of losses could be minimized. The losses which emanate from a lack of governance or transparency, that could be minimized. Technical losses also can be minimized. Now, in the last, it's towards the end of my discussion today. But once we talk about generation of electricity, we talk about renewables, we somewhere talk about climate change, not really in detail. So we can't just finish this topic without talking about conservation of energy. Any megawatt of energy which we conserve is actually a megawatt which we don't have to produce. So we have to intensify our energy conservation efforts. Our energy conservation potential at a very, the estimates are like more than 3,500 megawatt we can conserve, because we are wasting that kind of energy in our system. We have to come up with energy conservation law, establishing economic incentives for consumers to use less energy, and obviously stricter building codes. Now, I can't go in detail, but we have to think about coming up with building codes at least in our major cities, where at least new buildings, where people are ready, they are investing on building commercial buildings, and they're investing on building their new houses. So if they are ready to spend a substantial amount of money on building a new house, they can spend a bit more just making it more energy efficient. And we can do that systematically through policy measures by instituting better building codes, where the buildings should be energy efficient. And we have to incentivize companies to produce more energy efficient equipment. So the key messages of today: solar and wind is the future of global energy. Distributed generation will dominate the future. We use it in Pakistan, we come to that in Pakistan or not, but it is going to dominate the future. Decentralization is the future. Low regulation with high competition, that is required. We require open markets for energy. At the moment, it is a single buyer's model, although we are trying to move towards a multiple buyer market. I'm not going to go into the detail, but we are very far away from the real thing. And once we talk about renewables, the naysayers, whenever you talk to them, they will talk about that renewables can't be the base load. So yes, because renewables are intermittent in nature, until the time the energy storage technology becomes so cheap that it becomes efficient and effective, till that time we would need some base load. So base load can come from coal. Yes, Pakistan just can't stop using coal, but base load can also come from the nuclear. And I think nuclear should be our priority, because given within its own security framework, nuclear actually is environmentally friendly. It's better, and Pakistan can do it. Then conservation of energy is an important message. And transmission and distribution sector, it needs immediate attention and investment. So I think that's all, gentlemen and ladies. Thank you very much for your time.
Kashif sir, thank you very much. This is Asif Qureshi. So I'll be moderating this Q&A session. The chat box is available for all the participants. If they have any questions, just they can send it to us through the chat box. And meanwhile, I will take this opportunity of my moderating this particular session. I was looking at the wind power generation data for Pakistan, and I just wanted to have your thoughts on why the average annual plant factor for most of the wind plants have been lower than what the original policy or the tariff actually envisaged. And particularly in 2022, I think, especially in the second half of the calendar year, there seems to have been some sort of a wind drought in Pakistan, and you get to hear the same term elsewhere in the world as well, especially in the European countries. So can you sort of elaborate, based on your 6 or 7 years of experience of running this wind power plant, as to what sort of variation takes place through the year, and what specifically happened in 2022, especially in the second half, and whether that is one-off freakish weather, or the sort of a broader climate change effect which the country will have to bear with?
Ji Asif sir, thank you for your question. I think I would first go to the specifics of that. That the wind pattern has changed, at least that part of the year. We have seen less wind, and to be able to describe it as something which is just a one-off phenomena or a very deep-rooted climate change effect, I think it will take time, because generally once we talk about wind, we talk about the intermittent nature, which means that we are all the data is based on all the calculations are based on average wind, which means that during those averages, obviously there will be patterns of highs and lows which can't be predicted any precisely. So yes, there can be change in the patterns a bit here and there, that we have been experiencing in the last 6 years. But this time frame which you're pointing out, yes, there had been a significant departure from the pattern of the past 5 years. So now this is just open to discussion and maybe some more scientific inquiry, whether this is a persistent thing or it will change. In my view, I would say that the patterns are there, and in Pakistan, wind energy is still in nascent stage. We don't have the turbine height data for more than, I think it was 26, so more than 14-15 years. Before that, all our wind masts in Pakistan were weather wind masts, so which are not more than 10 or 20 or at the most 30 meters high, whereas a turbine is normally 85 meters high. So wind moves in various currents. So at 30 meter, you might be experiencing different wind, and at 85 meter, you might be experiencing totally different wind because of the currents. As you see, it's the same is the case with the oceans and the seas. But in my own view, there can be, and I believe in that the climate change is affecting the whole world. As you see, the freakish floods which happened in Pakistan. So obviously, we all know that that is not like something usual. Not every year this happens, but it happened. And the world is almost admitting that this is because of the climate change, as recently that has happened in Geneva also, previously in the COP26 and the previous conferences on the climate change. So I think the time will tell, but in my own view, or what you say, I suspect that climate change is also in the background playing its role.
Thank you very much, Kashif sir. Just to follow up on that particular comment that you made. So what advice would you give to investors and to financiers when they're looking at the wind projects in Pakistan as to what sort of load factors they should build into their projections, whether 30, 33% wind, or is there any particular technological, mix that they should be going for in terms of the height of the plant, or height of the tower, or the wind blade size, stuff like that, which can help actually reduce some of the risks involved in such projects?
Bilkul, you're right. The technology is moving at a very fast pace. Like in our wind project, the turbine was 1.5 megawatt each, which at that time was a very good size. Now the turbines are at least 2.5 megawatts each. And the turbines which are now rolling out in the market, onshore I'm talking, not offshore, they are actually over 3 megawatt a piece at least. Now, once you increase that capacity, the height increases, the blade size increases, and the whole dynamics they change. With that, the efficiency factor, the plant factor also changes, it increases because the things become more efficient. So I think the new investors, they have to look at the latest development in the technology. Second is the availability of data. Like the first 5 projects in Pakistan, because we were the first 5 ones, one of the first 5 ones. So we were given a wind risk coverage only because there was not enough data to really run any kind of models or analysis. But now, as I say, that if I speak about the wind mass which we put up ourselves, then later on other wind developers in Pakistan. So at least we have now 14-15 years of wind data of the mast height, wind turbine height masts, which means it's quite enough data. Now there are actually simulators, and there are models available, and the technical effort to any investor, the technical consulting companies can help to run those models and give them what kind of risks they are facing. You see, you can't be certain about wind in any case, but as you know, this is your field also, that once you are uncertain about the absolute figures, you have to look at the probabilities. So those models roughly, they throw very good results, that what kind of probability is there for any, what kind of wind you're going to see at the average level. I think that would be helpful in planning, because at the moment, despite of all these changes globally, there is no slowdown in the new wind investments.
Okay. Thank you, Kashif. Just again, a related question. There have been some talk about converting the existing wind farms to hybrid sites by installing solar. So do you see any progress on that front? Would you advocate that? And how would that help actually in bringing down the tariff for the older wind projects?
There are 3, I think there are 3 parts of your question, but one, I'm for it. So that's gone. Second, will it bring down the existing tariffs? Yes, it will, because even if you put in, let's say by any magical way, if you are able to put in within any existing wind farm, if you're able to put in similar number of turbines, let's say there's some technology which allows you to put in turbines closer to each other, and let's say you are able to put in you double the turbines in the same project, the cost will come down, because as I told you, the price of the technology is coming down like any other technology. With like a wind farm, which is like 10 years old, which started its construction 10 years old, actually is based on the cost of equipment, which is 10 years old. Now, let's say we say, okay, the technology has come to a point where instead of having a 500 meters distance between the two turbines, you can have 250, which means you can double the turbines. So even if you allow us to put in, let's say, similar number of turbines in between, the existing arrays, so the tariff is going to come down. So that is the second. Third, hybrid with solar. Yes, very good. You can use, because in all the Pakistani wind turbine wind projects, they are in a wilderness. They are in an area which is not agriculture area. So the land is actually of no use. Otherwise, if you go to Europe or other places, the land is sometimes a farmland where they are cultivating crops, and the wind turbines are just standing in the middle. So then there is some use of that land. In Pakistan, at least in Jampir, there is no use of that land. So if you put in, let's say, now the third point, you put in solar panels there, that will help generate more electricity. Second, in Pakistani grid code, we actually, for the substation, or to make it easy, from where you collect the energy and connect it with the grid, there are transformers, big, large transformers. In Pakistan, the policy is redundancy policy, which means if you are evacuating energy worth 50 megawatt, your transformers would be capable of at least 100 megawatt. This is through our grid code, which means if you put in, let's say, 30 megawatt worth of solar there, and the government allows that redundancy to reduce a bit, which won't affect the any other technical parameters. So without going to put up any new substation, you can evacuate the same electricity of those made by those solar panels through the same substation. So that obviously reduces the cost even further, because so it will reduce the cost for the end consumer.
Okay, and Kaustubh, you talked about in your presentation about the variability element and how that affects the grid. So, what do you think, in your opinion, where, given the current situation of Pakistan's national grid, how much of the VRE, variable renewable energy, can we safely induct into the system without jeopardizing the stability of the grid?
जी देखिए आसिफ साहब, ये जो है ना, this question is a very important question and I'm thankful you've asked it, and this is like a bane of this sector from the day we started working. Anybody who wants to bring down renewables would come up with this problem. Now, actually, there are technologies in place, and quite a few years ago, I wrote an article which was published in various Pakistani papers, and that was backed up by the Danish ambassador giving an interview, because we had a meeting prior to writing that article. There are technologies available where a very small investment in a generator, and I'm talking about layman's term, a very small generator, maybe 100 kilowatt, can help stabilize the grid, where you are putting in these alternate energy or the intermittent energy worth, let's say, 100 megawatt or 200 megawatt. So the myth about the problem of the grid, because of the intermittent nature of the renewables, has no technical standing anymore. Now there are solutions available where you can feed in as much renewable energy as possible, and just to technically safeguard the grid from the, sometimes there are spikes and there are lows. So for that, you don't have to come up with a base load plant of similar size. It's a very, very small generator with some with some software and some technology to put in place, which can help stabilize the grid. And on that, actually, it's quite a few years ago, but Danish embassy, their diplomats, their ambassador, they reached out to the government of Pakistan saying that you keep on inducting the renewables in Pakistan, keep on inducting renewables in your grid, and we are ready to provide you all these expertise, and it is not really a very expensive affair. Then, because I had a meeting and I was at that time advocating the same thing, so we wrote about that also. But unfortunately, this idea is still there that renewables will just bring down the grid. It's not that.
Okay, thank you, Kashyap, once again. Now I'll move to the questions that we've got in the chat box. The first question is from Mr. Owais Zia. And his key part of the question is whether Pakistan has contributed to renewable energy by innovating, like producing cheap renewable energy tools or research on new renewable energy in Pakistan. Is there any Pakistani startup working on that? Otherwise, we will import just like usual. Any insight on that would be appreciated, and how the government helped the startups in this regard.
Okay. Unfortunately, the long and short of this is that we don't have that kind of R&D startups in Pakistan at the moment, to my knowledge. What we have done, or many others like us, we have just put up, at least we were brave enough to put up the first wind farm in Pakistan where there was none. So at least that is a contribution. What we have done, or a few other companies are doing, that we are trying to take on various elements of this renewable sector in the vertical chain. We are taking on that work and creating that capability in Pakistan. But that still doesn't mean that is an innovation. But that only means that many of those things on which we were relying on foreign consultants, or we were relying on foreign companies, we are taking more and more of that on ourselves. I can speak of my company. I can speak of many companies who have moved away from foreign contractors doing their O&M and doing quite a lot of their things to the local companies. So that till that point. Beyond that, I have been invited to a few universities, their technical departments, to look at what kind of innovation is going on. I'm sorry, I haven't been able to see something which is really very inspiring.
Okay, thank you. Kashyap, the next question is from Ms. Andaleep Zahra, and she's asking, kindly guide if hydropower can be more effective solution of Pakistan energy issues.
Dekhi, there is no doubt that hydropower is very important, but the problem is that hydropower in Pakistan, you have now only opportunities which relate to run-of-the-river. Run-of-the-river projects, few of them are coming online, few are under construction. There, the energy profile or the power factor is almost the same as the renewable. They're run-of-the-river. Our rivers are not perennial. They don't flow at the same height the whole year. They flow at some time, and then they're gushing at some time, and they're almost dried at the time. So they are as intermittent as renewable. The problem with hydro is that hydro, whether it is run-of-the-river, dam I'm not talking about, but it takes, their gestation period is almost 3 to 5 times than the renewable energy projects. So you have to understand in Pakistani context that if you want to plug in the gap, the renewables, you have abundant resource, it is your resource. The gestation period is 1/3, 1/4, 1/5. Hydro, yes, you have, but one, the project is very difficult. Difficult means even now, in the run-of-the-river, anything up now towards Kashmir, towards GB, either the grid is not available, or the area is still under where sometimes World Bank won't allow you under Indo-Pacific Treaty, or India would raise any comments on that. So it becomes difficult. So I would say, if we can, we must go for hydro, but hydro is a long haul. In the run-of-the-river, it is almost the same to me as any renewable project. Yes, if you have and you go for a dam and that way, then you have like a sustained base load available and other things, but that is a totally different discussion. It really takes a different discussion there. So my point is that we can't denounce hydro. We should go for hydro as much as we can, but I don't think so that we have now much of further sites which are commercially viable in the near future available in hydro. That I can say from my understanding of the data available. So which means we should rather move more towards wind and solar.
Okay. Thank you, Kashyap. Next question is from Mr. Asad Hassan. He's asking, is there any focus on energy plants being run on waste or RDF? Can you sort of lay out, can you give us a lay of the land when it comes to the biomass and RDF plants in Pakistan?
RDF, the refuse drive fuel or the waste to energy plants, there has been intermittent work on these things in the past more than 10 years, including with the first attempt which we made while at that time 10 15 years ago I was in AWT, and then Fauji Foundation did it, and then some private parties they did it. The problem with that is there are few problems. One, the municipal waste in Pakistan is not really a very organized affair. Mostly the high quality waste from the waste to energy point of view. The high quality means which has high calorific value. That is being taken away by the scavengers, which are actually working under a very organized teams or whatsoever. So they take away the high quality waste by sifting through, and then once the waste which we are left with, its calorific value goes down. Second is the problem that the waste collection system in Pakistan is with the municipal corporation, and once you go and talk to them on these waste to energy plants, there are so many problems which you can envisage in your mind. There are so many problems there. So they are ready to let the city rot, but it becomes very difficult to discuss with them how they are going to give that waste for energy generation. So, but having said that, let's say we overcome these problems. All the major metropolis which you have, like Lahore, Multan, Faisalabad, and likewise Hyderabad, Karachi, they can have waste to energy plants, or they can have RDF plants, especially like in Karachi, Hyderabad, you can have RDF plants because RDF could be used in the cement factories. Instead of generating electricity through waste, you can just create RDF and give it to the cement factories and they can burn it in the kilns. The same way you are using that waste in energy production, but of a different kind. So I think this is the lay of the land. Some work has been done, mostly anywhere where it is not sustained its success was primarily because of lack of the proper infrastructure of waste collection.
Okay, thank you. Kaustubh, next question is from Mr. Osman Malik. He's asking, what do you think about Pakistan's status on energy saving industry? I think he's probably talking about the role of NICA, which has been assigned this important responsibility.
I think we are lagging behind in the energy conservation efforts. Now we have this NICA, and recently we have seen our government giving a lot of thrust towards energy conservation efforts. But if you see, most of those things they're not wrong, but they are like superficial. We have to really work at a what you say, at a very dedicated level, as I pointed out. Like your appliances, do they have energy rating system? Is there any authority which is certifying them for their energy rating and either penalizing or rewarding the manufacturers on the energy efficiency of their appliances, and at the same time informing the consumers? I don't think so there is anybody there. So if, let's say, 1 million people go out to buy a fridge, they have no clue except what the salesman tells them, which is good looking, which one is better, and blah blah blah, but they have no clue which fridge is more energy efficient and which is not. Now that is like a policy level thing. So that is one thing. The second, as I talked about in the energy conservation, we lose so much energy through our buildings. Our buildings have no insulation of any kind. Do we have? No insulation of any kind. So now that is again a policy level where you come up with the building codes and at least implement them at the new build houses, new build commercials. So with these things, it will take time, but it will have a long-lasting impact on the energy conservation efforts. At the moment, I believe it is good. It is good to have something. It is good the government saying something. Closing the shops, even that would conserve energy. Daylight saving time is a norm in the whole world. You can do that. But I think we have to go even beyond that.
Okay. Kaustubh, we, I think, have already overshot the allocated time of 1 hour by 5 to 7 minutes. I would love to have this conversation go on for another half an hour or 45 minutes, but in the interest of time, and since it's Maghrib prayer time in Karachi as well. So with that, I would like to thank you very much for this very insightful presentation and responding to the questions that I posed and which came from the participants. And I would like to thank all the participants as well for posting the questions and for attending this presentation. And with that, I would like to hand it back to Ms. Sarwat Hassan or Sajjad Saab if he's there.
Ji, thank you so much, Asif Qureshi Saab, for taking time out for this. I would also like to thank our chief guest, Kamran Kashif Sahab. He's out of the country and he took time out for us. We really appreciate that. In the end, of course, thank you all the participants. Thank you, Sajjad Saab, for being here. I'd request all of you to please share your valuable feedback. You could scan the QR code, or we will be sharing a link with you over email. Thank you so much, and it has been a pleasure to host you. Thank you.
Thank you.